Emily stared at Margaret in complete disbelief. "There has to be another page." Margaret didn't answer immediately. Instead, she slowly reopened the folder. "I thought the same thing when I first read it." She carefully turned every page. "There isn't another page." Emily felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Her father had trusted her with every important decision in the company. He had taught her everything he knew. He had once looked her in the eyes and said, "One day, this workshop will need someone who values people more than money." She had always believed he was talking about her. So why? Why had he left everything to Daniel? Daniel finally stood up. "I guess Dad made the right decision." His voice carried just enough confidence to make Emily uncomfortable. He knew who was ready to run the company. Emily looked at him. There was no sadness in his eyes. No grief. Only satisfaction. That single moment planted the first seed of doubt in her mind. Margaret quietly gathered the documents. As everyone prepared to leave, she gently touched Emily's arm. "Would you stay for a minute?" Daniel walked out without saying goodbye. The office door closed behind him. Silence filled the room. Margaret walked toward the large bookshelf behind her desk. She reached into the bottom drawer of an old wooden cabinet and removed a small sealed envelope. Emily frowned. "I've never seen that before." "You weren't supposed to." Margaret carefully placed the envelope on the desk. On the front, in Richard Carter's unmistakable handwriting, were only 7 words. "For Emily. Only if you're forgotten ****. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She looked up. "What is this?" Margaret folded her hands. 3 years ago, your father gave this to me. He made me promise I would never hand it to anyone. Unless one condition was met." Emily could barely breathe. What condition? Margaret looked directly into her eyes. "If his official will ever left you with nothing." The room fell silent. Emily slowly picked up the envelope. Her hands were trembling. This doesn't make any sense." Margaret nodded. "I know. Richard believed something might happen after his death. He never explained why. He simply said, 'If Emily is forgotten, she'll know what to do.'" Emily carefully broke the seal. Inside, there was only one folded letter. And a small brass key taped to the paper. She unfolded the letter. Her father's handwriting covered every line. The very first sentence made her blood run cold. "Emily, if you're reading this, someone has betrayed our family. If his official will ever left you with nothing." The room fell silent. Emily slowly picked up the envelope. Her hands were trembling. This doesn't make any sense." Margaret nodded. "I know. Richard believed something might happen after his death. He never explained why. He simply said, 'If Emily is forgotten, she'll know what to do.'" Emily carefully broke the seal. Inside, there was only one folded letter. And a small brass key taped to the paper. She unfolded the letter. Her father's handwriting covered every line. The very first sentence made her blood run cold. "Emily, if you're reading this, someone has betrayed our family." The room beyond the steel door was no larger than a small storage closet. There were no shelves. No furniture. Only a single wooden table standing beneath a dim ceiling light. On the table rested 3 objects. A thick leather journal. A silver USB drive. And a sealed manila envelope with one sentence written across the front. "Open this only after you find the hidden room." Emily slowly stepped inside. The steel door quietly closed behind her. For a brief second, the sound made her heart race. She carefully picked up the envelope. Her father's handwriting covered the front. She broke the seal. Inside was another handwritten letter. "Emily. If you've reached this room, then I was right. Someone tried to erase the truth. Everything they were looking for is here. The journal contains every meeting. Every suspicious conversation. Every payment I couldn't explain. The USB drive contains copies of documents that no one else knows exist. If anything happens to me, take these directly to Margaret Collins. Do not trust anyone else. Especially anyone who suddenly tells you they've always been on your side. Some people don't reveal who they really are until they believe they've already won. Emily slowly placed the letter back inside the envelope. Her hands were shaking. She reached for the leather journal. The first page contained only one sentence. It started with Daniel. Emily stared at the words. No. She whispered. There has to be another explanation. She turned the page. The journal described conversations that Richard had secretly recorded over several months. Daniel had repeatedly pressured his father to transfer company ownership early. Whenever Richard refused, Daniel became more aggressive. Then another name appeared. Victor Hayes. Richard had written. Victor introduced himself as an estate planning consultant. Something about him never felt right. He keeps asking questions that have nothing to do with my business. He wants to know where I keep my original legal records. Emily's heartbeat grew faster with every page. Richard had even written dates. Bank account numbers. Meeting locations. Everything. This wasn't just a diary. It was evidence. Then, a loud metallic sound echoed somewhere outside the office. Emily froze. Someone was inside the workshop. She quickly turned off the light inside the hidden room. The office outside became completely silent. Then, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Getting closer. Someone stopped directly outside Richard's office. Emily held her breath. The office door handle slowly began to turn. The office door slowly creaked open. Emily remained perfectly still inside the hidden room. A narrow beam of light swept across Richard's office. Someone had entered. She heard slow footsteps moving across the wooden floor. One step. Then another. The stranger wasn't rushing. He was searching. Emily carefully looked through the tiny gap between the steel door and the bookshelf. A tall man wearing a dark jacket stood beside Richard's desk. His face was partially hidden beneath a black baseball cap. He opened one drawer after another. Paper files landed on the floor. He searched every cabinet with growing frustration. Then, his phone rang. He answered immediately. I've searched the office. A short pause. No. I still can't find it. Emily's heart pounded. Who was he talking to? The man listened for several seconds before replying. Don't worry. If the girl finds anything, we'll know. Emily felt a chill run through her body. The girl. They were talking about her. The stranger ended the call and walked toward the walnut bookshelf. Emily instinctively stepped backward. If he discovered the hidden room, everything would be over. The man stopped only inches from the bookshelf. He slowly placed his hand against the wood. Emily could hear her own heartbeat. One more push, and he would find the hidden door. Suddenly, a loud truck horn echoed outside the workshop. The stranger froze. He glanced toward the front window. Another horn followed. Someone had arrived. The man cursed under his breath. Not now. He quickly turned away from the bookshelf, hurried out of the office, and disappeared through the front entrance. Emily waited. 10 seconds. 30 seconds. 1 full minute. Only then did she slowly open the steel door. The office was empty. She rushed to the front window. Outside, the black SUV from the previous night was pulling away from the parking lot. Emily immediately reached for her phone. She zoomed in and quickly took a photograph of the license plate before the vehicle disappeared into the darkness. As she lowered the phone, She noticed something lying on the office floor. The stranger had dropped a folded business card. Emily picked it up. Printed across the front were only 3 words. Hayes Legal Group. She turned the card over. On the back, someone had handwritten a single appointment. Monday, 9 a.m. Emily stared at the words. For the first time, she finally had a name. And she knew exactly where to begin looking. Emily Carter had always believed one simple truth. No matter what happened in life, her father would never abandon her. Richard Carter wasn't just her father. He was her best friend. Her mentor. The man who built Carter Custom Furniture from a tiny garage into one of the most respected woodworking companies in Oregon. Growing up, Emily spent nearly every Saturday at the workshop, while other children played in parks. She learned how to sand oak, polish walnut, and recognize the smell of freshly cut cedar. Richard used to smile whenever she ruined another piece of scrap wood. Wood can always be fixed, he would say. But character is built one choice at a time. Emily never forgot those words. Even after she moved into the company's financial department as an adult, Richard still treated her like his greatest partner. Everyone believed Emily would eventually inherit the business. Everyone. Except one person. Her older brother, Daniel. Unlike Emily, Daniel had never loved the workshop. He loved the money it generated. Whenever Richard talked about craftsmanship, Daniel talked about profits. Whenever Richard invested in employees, Daniel complained about expenses. The arguments between father and son became more frequent over the years. Richard rarely raised his voice, but Daniel often did. Emily tried to stay out of those conversations. She believed they would eventually work things out. She was wrong. Everything changed on a cold October morning. Emily's phone rang just after sunrise. She smiled when she saw the hospital's number. Her father had been recovering after minor heart surgery. She expected good news. Instead, the voice on the other end quietly said, "Miss Carter. I'm very sorry. Your father passed away early this morning." The world stopped. Emily couldn't remember driving to the hospital. She couldn't remember signing papers. She couldn't even remember leaving. The only thing she remembered was holding her father's hand one last time. A week later, friends, family, and employees gathered for Richard Carter's funeral. Hundreds of people came. Customers traveled from neighboring states. Former employees returned after years away. One after another, people shared stories about Richard's kindness. "He gave me my first job. He paid for my daughter's college. He helped me keep my house." Emily realized something that day. Her father had quietly changed countless lives. After the service, Margaret Collins, Richard's attorney and lifelong friend, approached the family. "There will be a reading of Richard's will tomorrow morning." Daniel nodded immediately. Emily simply whispered, "Whatever Dad wanted. I'll respect it." She truly meant those words. The following morning, the Carter family gathered inside Margaret's law office. The room felt unusually cold. Margaret unfolded a thick folder and adjusted her glasses. She looked uncomfortable. "I've handled Richard's legal affairs for over 20 years. I never imagined I'd be reading these documents." She took a slow breath. Then she began. Richard's savings were left to several charities. His personal collection of antique woodworking tools would be donated to the vocational school where he once taught. His lake cabin would go to Daniel Carter. His investment accounts also belonged to Daniel. Emily waited quietly. There had to be another page. Margaret continued reading. Then she closed the folder. Emily frowned. "That's it?" Margaret slowly looked at her. Emily wasn't mentioned. Not once. No share of the company. No inheritance. Nothing. The silence became unbearable. Daniel leaned back in his chair. For the first time in weeks, a small smile appeared on his face. Emily couldn't speak. This couldn't be real. Her father, the man who trusted her with every major decision, had left her with absolutely nothing.